Hello guys, welcome to Webtricks Home. Today I'm going to show you how to create a website using CSS box model. For this I'm going to pick up a random website template and its slices in the template. I'll use Photoshop to pick up the font colors as well as the background colors. If you don't know how to slice images, please have a look at the video related to it on my channel. Or you can go to www.webtrickshome.com for detailed descriptions. I'll show you how to create desired layout using the box models. But first of all, let's create a folder for the project. Alright. So here I'll give the name Copperitics for the folder, the name used in the template. I've already got the slices, image slice to use on my website, as you can see it here. So you can see those are all the images that's in the template, right? And even the name, you can see it over here. Now let's create an HTML file. I'll name it index.html and then a CSS file too. And I'll give it a name style.css. So good to go. Okay, then let's open both of them in a text editor. I'll be using Sublime text editor here. You can use anyone you've got or you prefer. Alright, so hold on. So let's start with the mandatory HTML structure. I'll add a title for the web page first. Okay, then link the CSS file we just created and open it in a browser. Okay, now let's have a look at the template and try to imitate it. I'll be creating rectangular boxes on top of the template and show you exactly what we're going to do. Ready to go? So first of all, we'll create a full width container that will hold all the contents from the top bar. Sorry. Okay, let's give it a name so that we can add styles to it easily from the CSS file. Okay, the name's done, so add some CSS styles to it. So let's just add the background color first. So for this, we'll go to the Photoshop and pick up the background color. So this will be the background color for the top bar. We'll be adding in our web page. Then add some height and the padding. So you can see there's a bit more space on the left and the right side of the contents on the top, right? So that's the reason I've added 50px on the left and the right side. You know, the padding works like the first, if you give one value, it will be allocated to all four sides. If you give two values, the first will be given allocated to the first top and bottom, and the rest on the left and right. So now we'll be creating two other boxes. One will contain the website name and the other will contain the menu items. Okay, so we'll first add the elements, the contents, and see how it looks, and then I'll be dividing the width, adding the boxes so that you can clearly understand. So looks good. We'll be adjusting everything. So first the margin, automatic margin. We'll be overriding that, and the padding too. The main items take 40 pixel on the left, so we'll be overwriting that one here. Okay, quite good. So now the color for the text, you can see font color. Quite good. So we'll be adding some styles for H1 on top. So we're trying to keep it nicely aligned. Yeah, looks good. So we'll be adding the menu items, and see how it looks. Having a look at the titles from the template and trying to copy that. So you can see all the elements are split block over here. So we'll be adding two dips inside the top bar so that we can divide the width and align them as we need it. So adding two divs over here, giving some names, and then a few CSS styles. No changes, so we'll be adding styles over here. Now we'll be defining the width for these two divs so that they take up only the width we allocate them. So let's give it 30% float left, and the other one remain, you can see here. So 30% seems quite good. Now we need to float the other one as well so that all the elements from that one shows up at the right. Okay, you can float left or right for the last one. Okay, looks good. So now the basic main styling. We'll just first of all we'll remove the style type disk from this one. Have a look here. Okay, all the dots will be gone. Yep. So we'll be adding some more styles and anchor tags and the menu titles, right? Okay, text decoration then, and change the color. a bit of mistake here. Yeah, it looks good now. So flip them left so that they are displayed in line. So they're all compact over here. So we'll be adding some margins on the right side to segregate them from each other. Looks good. Now we can add styling of there for the active element, taking up the background color for this background of home, right? Yeah, looks good. So you can see here we'll be adding a class. So first add this property on that active class and see how it looks, and I'll tell you how to do it. So we'll be adding the background, then the padding and the border radius, right? You can see the background over there. So we'll be adding a bit more space over there, padding, inner spaces so that the background looks a bit bigger. Here it goes. And then the border radius. Okay, looks cool, but you can see that all the other menu items are just not inlined properly, aligned properly. So we'll be, we can first add the color, and then the font weight, and check how it looks. We can define the path like this so that the color works. Yep. You can do add important in the property as well. So to align all those menu items properly, we'll be adding the padding on not on the active, so that the padding is allocated to all of them. So it looks good now, properly aligned. And then we'll be adding the hover property so that all the menu items appear the same way when the mouse is hovered over them, right? Okay, looks good. Yep. So you've got the menu items there, so you can try aligning them on the right if you need, and then adding some paddings or margins on the menu div so that all the elements, the left and the right elements, are aligned properly. Yep. Let's try text aligning right if it works. Okay, no way. Actually, we can add float right property on menu, but I'm trying to align it changing the width of the div. Okay, then align the other div. It's not necessary, but it's quite good. Okay, now we'll be adding the bigger image. We'll be creating a div, and we don't need to define the width. As you know, right? All the divs will take up the width of 100%. That's display block when not given any other width from the CSS, right? So we'll be adding the same as we'll be putting the image in the image folder, right? So that will be easier to call the image from the HTML file, copy the image name, and just paste it up there with the image path. And since we're needing 100% of width, we'll be adding it to it. So you can see the image is done. Quite easy, right? So let's go for the other one now. Let's delete all the previous boxes rectangles so it's quite easier to have a look. So here we can see the background color in the body section. Let's add it first, right? Okay, you can see it before adding some contents below, because we have already added the background for all the divs we have created, and one div we didn't use background has got the image on full width, so you can see it right now. Now we'll be creating another div that will contain the button segment here, right? So you can see there's the padding as well on the left and the right section. That's equal to the top one we worked previously. So we'll be adding the same amount of padding here as well. So first create a div, give it some name, and add the required CSS properties. Okay, padding 10px and 50px. We don't need to define the width when we're using 100% of the width, right? And we don't need to float them as well. You can see at the top also where we use the same thing. So we'll be adding some text, random text, and create a button. The text is much bigger over here, so we'll be reducing it. see how it looks. Okay, it's taking up full width. Then at the bottom, okay, it comes up at the bottom. So now let's put them in some divs so that we can define the width. So we'll be adding some around 70-30, whatever we want. First created here. Okay, so we'll be adding some CSS over there, adding the width and floating it on the required direction. For the left, we'll be floating it to the left, while for the right, we'll be floating it to the right. So let's give it a value of 60-40 and see how it looks. Have a check. Okay, a bit of distance of 10% in the middle. So have a look at the template. So you can see the text size, font size on the left and right on both sections are quite bigger. So we'll be adding some font sizes and check out how it looks. Okay, change the color as well. Pick up the color from the Photoshop color picker tool. Yep. Add a bit more font size, increase the font size a bit more. Yep, it looks good. Let's reduce the text, make it even shorter. Okay, looks good now. So now let's define the background for the button, add some stylings to it. So I'm picking up the background color from the Photoshop, adding the same in CSS. So since it's a HTML element, we can call it directly without the dot or hash over here. So we'll be adding some backgrounds. Now we can just call it button because we don't have any other buttons over here, so that won't be a problem. So we'll be adding some paddings and the text transform So we can add border and then the border radius, whatever we need. So let's add the style and see how it looks. Yep, doesn't look much good, right? So let's add a width. Quite good. So you can see here there's an image inside the button as well. So let's add the image and see how it looks. So we won't be adding any width for the image because it's a small image. Let's see how it appears. Not quite good, right? So we can try putting these two contents in separate divs and then float it left and right and see how it appears, so then we can style both of them individually. So let's put the image inside a div, right? And then the text too. So add some styles, define some width for both of them and float them. So I'm leaving a bit of space in the middle, floating both of them, one on the left and one on the right, so that there's a little bit of space in the middle. So we need to break the roof for the text, as we can see in the template. Yep. Define the font size over here. And see how it looks. Okay, text align left and color white. Yep. So you can see here the upper row. Let's start have text a bit smaller and the lower one a bit larger. So trying to style them with span. Check out how it looks. Looks good. Now trying to put the image in the middle. can see we've got the image a bit on the top. Trying to adjust the font size. You can add styles as you wish, right? So basically what I'm doing here is trying to make the size of the button equal to the size of the div on the left. So putting the image in the middle somewhat. So yeah, I'm not working on the PNG file right now because we're basically trying to create the structure. So let's go to the bottom one, next section over here. So you can see there's a border on the top, right? So you can just add a border, try adding border over there, or you can even add border top on the next section and see how it looks. So basically when you add button on the div, that's the width of 100%, right? It comes, the border comes in full width, and you can see it much properly when there's nothing below it. So we'll try that one on the other segment, adding border top. And for that, we'll be creating a box. So to create the bottom border on the top equal to the div above it, I'll be trying to create a div in a different way here. Rather than adding the paddings as we did on the top of the sections, I'll be adding width over here and we'll try to line it in the middle. Let's give it a name first. Okay, trying to give the width 90% and see how it appears. And to see it, we need to give a height or a border, right? So let's give it a border. So let's see how it appears. A bit on the top. So we can add magenta property over here, or even add height for the button segment, right? But first, let's adjust the width. Yep, a bit bigger. So trying to cut it down. A bit smaller. So place width in the middle of this too. Yep. Looks good. So we'll be putting it down, adding some height on the bottom segment. Yep. Let's add some height and try how it appears. Adjust the height so that we get it exactly where we want it. A bit more. So let's try 85. Yep, good to go. So we can just remove the height and border height, from this div because we don't need that. And we'll be adding border top only because we don't need the border on all the three sides. We can add the border size. Now it's on the bottom, if you can see it, but it will be much more visible when I add contents at the bottom. So now let's go for the other elements. Now we need here four boxes of equal size. I'm painting it red over here. So we'll be creating box of equal size. The first one will be floating to the left and the other one to the right. You can see the distance between these boxes are also equal, right? So let's create a div. We'll be creating one div first and adding contents in it and see how it appears. So we'll be adding images, then some random text, and define the width 100% inside the div. So that will be taking up the space of the div, 100% space of the div. Adding some titles, and then the random text, and reducing the text size, and add one button too, as we can see in the template. Read more, and we'll be adding this double arrow, right angled, and see how it appears. So you can see it's taking up the space that we defined a bit earlier, the width of the border, right? So we'll be adding some styling over here, defining the width. Okay, maybe around 20-21%. Let's try 20%. And float the first one to the left and see how it appears. Yep. And then add the background. Then we can add the text color as well. So you can see there's some inner spaces. So we'll be going to that one first. Check how it looks. Okay, so you can see the inner spaces over here around the elements on the box, right? So it's quite equal on the left, right, and basically on all four sides. So we'll be adding that padding on the box. So single value will work for one for all sides. Okay, looks good, but I add a little bit of padding. A little more. Yep. Looks good. Now, add style for the buttons, right? We can directly call it A or just add some class name and HTML size. So we'll be adding some buttons and then the paddings as we did for the top menu, right? Okay. Then the border radius. So now it looks good, but we need to move it a little below. As you can see, right? The space between the paragraph and the bottom. So we need to add some margins. You can see here. So let's try giving margin top an A and check if it works. So you can see it doesn't work. So we'll be adding the padding, a margin, and the P element rather than the A element. So we can add it on both P elements so that it looks good on both spacing on both P elements or we can just call one different element and just add the styling. So I'll be adding it to both of them, so it looks good now. Okay, so remove the text decoration so that the underline doesn't appear when you hover over it. So all looks good, right? So we can copy it and paste all 4 times. Okay, looks good. Now we want to work on the styling, but first put the last one there on the right. We can just try adding margin on the right first, but we'll be adding box 2 over here rather than creating a new div. I'm adding a new class over there and float it to the right. Since it's written below the box 1 property, it will work. Yeah, you can see it. So we'll be adding some margins on the right side of the divs, 25px. Now you can see, right, the last div is also taking up that margin, so we'll be overriding that margin right on the last div, creating a margin 0, or margin right 0. That works. Now we're gonna adjust the margin right property on other 3 divs, add some more value, and check which value works best. A bit more, I guess. Oops, decrease a bit. A bit more. Okay, that's fine. Now you can see the contents, the current contents are attached to the border on top. So we'll be adding some margin or the padding, add some paddings to move it a little lower on the main div. You can use any of them. So I'll be using padding on top and bottom, and left and right would be 0px, so that it takes up the same space. Happy? So now we can go to the other section, next section now. Let's have a look. First, remove all those rectangles so that you don't get confused with those things, right? So now let's have a look. So we'll be creating 3 divs, but first the same div, same size div, and now I'll show you how to do it. So we can use the same property or even use the padding as well, right? So we'll be creating the div first, and then we can define the same width. We can even add the paddings as we did on the top. So I'll be copying the same property over here, just changing the name. We won't need the border top, we won't need the padding as well. We're working on the width only. Change the name, yep, that works good. So we'll be adding some more divs, sided, changing the names, copying it, yep. We'll be changing the name for the last one, as we'll be working on different width div on the third side, right? You can see the first 2 on the left are of equal size, while the third one is almost double of that size, right? So add styles as we needed, or first put the contents inside it and then add styles. Same thing, we'll be trying to add around 20% of the width and float the first two on the left and a bit of margin on the right. Let's try how it works. We can adjust the value all the time, right? Then the second box will be given width of around 50%, then float right. So we don't need any margin over here. Oops, I need to keep it width, right? Okay, the CSS part is done. So we can look at the template and try to add content. Here you can see there's a title and the image on the same line. Both are in inline, right? But whenever you add some headings, the heading elements, H1, H2, H6, right? They take up full width and are displayed block. So we'll be trying to keep it in line. And for that, we can use some trick. So let's put both of them in the heading element and see how it appears. Add some random text. Yep. I'm trying to decrease the size of the text, right, and see how it appears. So if I've got the same thing again, so we can just copy it, paste it for the next step as well. Yep. So what I've got is, we can just have a look. Looks quite good. Inline, but the images are inline, right? So we can just add styles, decrease the text a bit more. Okay, it looks a bit good now. Add some spacing above the headings. Check how it appears. Okay, that's just it, as per the need. Okay, so add the next content. Okay, adding the link. Okay, so look at it, it's just a spacing between this three divs, right? All the time. Yeah. Trying a bit more. Now we can go for the footer, right? Take the background color, and you can see here's the same styling, but we can't use the width 92% over here because we need the width 100%. So we'll just create a div first and add the paddings the same way as we did for the first or third segment, right? So padding will be 10 px, 15 px, and 50 px. Okay, so background we just picked up from Photoshop, right? And the color would be white. And see where it appears. It's appearing on the top. Can tell me why? Because we did not define the height for the contents on the top 3 sections, right? So we can do that or put the margin top property on the footer. But it's better to use the height and check where it appears. So we'll be adding the height for all those things. Yep, coming down. Okay, looks good. That brought the other section a bit down, and that's fine for me. Right, we'll be adding the height for the other one as well. Okay, a bit more. A little more. Okay, looks good now. So we can add a bit more height if we want. But now we're going to create 2 sections that might be of equal width. One floating on the left, other floating on the right. Right? Now you know, right, why we are creating divs and floating in left and right in CSS. So we'll be creating 2 divs, one for the left contents and the other for the right contents. Give it a different name, unique name from the others we already used on the top. Then use the stylings to float them left and right, right? Then add the contents inside it. So I'll be basically copying the menu from the top and pasting it in the bottom. So we don't need the class active there, so we'll be removing it. Now adding some stylings. Placing the other contents. Yep, the first part is done. But the styling, right? So we can style it from here, removing the list styles, that's the dot, then adding styles for the anchor tags, adding colors, then text decoration, removing it. So floating all those elements on the left, adding some margin on the right, as we did on the top, right? We did it. We just basically didn't call the same class name because we don't want hover styles over here. So we are putting the same size and we're adding border right. Yep, looks good. Now adding some paddings on the right as well, so that the border is in the middle. Yep, looks good. Trying to separate the paragraph from the top, not working. Defining the width for both of these divs. Adding the required properties. As we know, we need to align the text on the right for the last div. Yep. Now you can see we need to define the height for the footer, right? We can reduce the height if we want. A bit more. Yep. Looks quite good. Now adding the contents on the right, but let's try the BR tag over here if that works. Yep, cool. So let's try it, giving a div for the UL only. If it works. No way. So just adding the BR. So adding contents for the right section, connect with us. Then adding the images. Basically I'll be using only one image, copying it again and again. looks good, aligned on the right. So removing the last border, adding some styles in it. Removing the border from the last ULA element. Yep, looks good. So now we can add the paddings for the margins for the paragraphs on the left, and we can even place those images on the right a bit lower. Looks good. Now we need to add a little bit of height. So this way it can be done. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please subscribe for our channel for new updates and videos. Thank you.